Catholic bishops across the U.S. begin a week-long meeting today to discuss looming questions about the clergy sex abuse crisis. They're meeting at a seminary north of Chicago at the request of the Pope, who is sending his personal preacher to the retreat.
CBS News has also learned of several cases in which nuns have faced accusations of sexual misconduct. Nikki Batiste reports.
This is Sister Shaw.
Yes, this is Sister Eileen Shaw.
This is the nun Trish Cahill says she confided in when she was 15 years old.
I would have done anything for her. I would have died for her.
At a convent in New Jersey, she says she told Eileen Shaw things she'd never revealed to anyone about her now deceased uncle, a priest, whom she claims sexually abused her starting at age 5.
She gave me everything that was lacking that I didn't even know I was lacking. I was so broken. She filled in all those pieces.
She now describes that process as grooming, saying Shaw plied her with drugs and alcohol while teaching her how to have sex with a woman.
I'm with my friends during the day, and I'm with this pedophile nun on the evenings and on the weekends and in the summer.
Pedophile nun is a phrase I think most of our viewers will have never heard.
Really? Wow. That's really a shame because there's a lot of them out there. It's the secret not yet told.
Mary Dispenza is trying to change that.
The demands of chastity and celibacy are unrealistic demands for many of us.
Dispenza, a former nun from another congregation, remembers what happened when a superior summoned her to her room.
I knelt down right next to her, and she kissed me all over softly my face. And I want to say, oh, but it wasn't bad. But it was, and I've carried it with me till today.
Through her work with SNAP, the survivors network of those abused by priests, she says she would occasionally hear about abuse or cover-ups by nuns. But since the publication of a grand jury report identified hundreds of pedophile priests in Pennsylvania, at least 18 people have contacted her to share stories of abuse by religious sisters.
We've heard so much about alleged child sex abuse by priests. Why haven't we heard about nuns?
A lot has to do with the culture of nuns, they are very, very private by nature.
Trish Cahill reported her abuse to the Sisters of Charity of St. Elizabeth in 1994. The congregation paid her a $70,000 out-of-court settlement.
They had canon lawyers on retainer just for people like me. Shut her up, pacify her, tell her you love her and you'll pray for her, and send her on her way.
In a statement, the congregation tells CBS News the case was investigated immediately when it was reported in 1994, and a settlement was reached that was mutually agreed on by all parties. We believe that the Sisters of Charity acted in a responsible manner.
Hi, is this Eileen?
We reached out to Sister Eileen Shaw, who Cahill says she continued to see for years as an adult.
You don't wish to discuss this at all? She just hung up.
The Sisters of Charity removed her from her role as a grade school principal, but report she remains a nun. They're providing her with food and housing while restricting her from outside ministry.
I think it's really sad.
In the meantime, Cahill says the settlement she signed wasn't enough to help her deal with a lifetime of trauma.
What is your hope?
That this is the beginning of many, many times more that I get to speak, and I get to educate, and I get to possibly prevent this from happening to anyone ever again.
So Nikki Batiste is joining us now with more on this story. Really disturbing. And you know what? I was also surprised to hear nuns. Are the victims all women?
In this case, of the 18 victims, we've spoken with several of them. At least one is actually a male. It's a question a lot of people have asked me after their initial surprise that nuns are involved in this at all. So they're primarily women, but some males have also been sexually abused by nuns.
It just feels like a cabal, and I just wonder, where is the Pope on all this?
The Pope has not said a lot. I think a lot of the U.S. bishops here are waiting to go to the Global Conference of Bishops in Rome in February, where the Pope has promised he will address the sexual abuse issue and set some really concrete steps. So I think we have to wait and see what those will be.
So why do you suppose we haven't heard about nuns being perpetrators in this sort of sexual abuse? I know in the piece, the woman that you spoke to said that, they're particularly private, but they're not any more private than priests.
I think that perhaps, I know a lot of the victims we spoke with, the shame, first of all, a lot of them didn't want to come forward, just like a lot of the victims we've heard who have say they've been abused by priests. Also, I think perhaps they might think it's harder to believe because this is a female. She's probably maternal. How could a nun, how could a woman do this? And really, it wasn't until the Pennsylvania grand jury report where others started coming forward about priests that a lot of these victims told us they finally felt like maybe they'd even be believed in this case. And then you have a nun who says she was sexually abused by another nun. Can't not believe her.
And while I was watching your piece, and you sort of lead with the idea that as a child she confides in this nun about what is happening to her, and as you point out, to find that somebody who you might consider an ally is actually an enabler, how is she processing that even today?
Trish Cahill has been struggling with this her entire life. She told us her parents weren't great. One was an alcoholic. This nun took advantage of the fact that she needed someone in her life and groomed her, and that's what we've seen in case after case.
So there's this week-long meeting, right, happening in Chicago to discuss the abuse of priests by priests. Presumably it will expand beyond that. Do we know anything more about what's going to happen at this meeting?
What we know is that the Pope asked for the bishops here to meet in Chicago. This is the first time they've had a retreat like this. Initially, we were told that they would discuss the sexual abuse allegations going on. Since then, last night, they told us, no, it's just going to be prayer. They're just going to sort of process everything that's gone on. They've been asked to wait to go to see the Pope in February.
That's interesting, but also kind of disappointing.
Yes.
I mean, how long? There's been ongoing discussions about this. I mean,
it's hard to believe that they aren't going to be discussing it behind closed doors. But, the church has been really shut down. Everyone's waiting, particularly the victims, to hear what is going to be done.
Nikki, you've been covering this story for quite some time now, and I know that you and I were talking offline a little bit about how people are starting to reach out to you with their stories, and that's just sort of an indication of how powerful your reporting is, and probably means that there's a lot more people out there that we don't know about who are going to watch this and perhaps feel that there's an opportunity for them to tell their story. So thank you very much.
Thank you.